Hello everyone, it's Dan, welcome back. I swore to myself that I wasn't going to batch paint large units like this anymore, but I made an exception here for two reasons. One, because these are going to be painted black, which I thought would be pretty easy, but also because I needed to clear these off of my desk because there's going to be a box of Footnights coming from Victrix a little bit later this year that I plan to pick up, review, build, and paint. So I didn't want to have all these Footnights standing around as well. So what we're looking at here after the positive response from my Templar video, I thought I would do one on Hospitallers. So that's what we're doing here in the background. Unusually for me, I primed in black. Usually I prime in white, but for obvious reasons here, I primed in black. And then the first step there is I took some bad in black and basically just repainted the entire model in black. It seems like a redundant step, but it's important because primer isn't an even coat, and the color of the black primer isn't going to perfectly match any black acrylic paint that you use. So it's important that you just go through, take a big brush, and do a layer of black. What I'm doing here in the background too, this is another unusual step, is that I kind of have, because there's such a huge contrast gap between pure black and, as you're well aware, if you've seen my other painting videos, the pure white that we're going to work up to for a highlight layer, there really needs to be kind of an intermediate step here. And so I've found some kind of bluish gray color is really good if you do a light dry brush right after you do the black step when kind of nothing else has been painted on the model. It's a good transition step between the black and the pure white that we're going to work our way up to. And with the tunics, well, not completely done, but at least base coated there. And dry brush, we move into our silver bits. And so I'm using lead belcher for this. And just going through, it's a lot of chainmail on these models. These miniatures are mostly the Wargames Atlantic Footnights, but there are a couple of conversions in there. There's a couple of Perry Agincourt Footnights, and there's, I think, 2 or 3 out-of-the-box Fireforge Templar Knights as well. So a nice little mix of miniatures here. And as I said, these are going to be painted up as like Holy Order Hospitallers, and then my other unit of Footnights, which will be likely just purely Victrix once they're released, will probably be a mix of different heraldries. So as I've mentioned too in prior videos, I'm big into fantasy wargaming. Like I use historical models for fantasy wargaming, which is why I take some creative liberties on like time period, like Agincourt models mixed in here with these like 11th century Footnights. So there you go. So again, still just base coating silver here. As I said before, it's mostly, there's like chainmail on the feet on these models. The Agincourt Knights have some like plate greaves that need to paint, and the swords. It's not like critically important because you can go back and clean it up. It's just important at this step that you don't hit the black tabards, because then you're gonna have to go back and clean them up. But if you do, that's again the reason we put that black layer on at the very beginning. Was so that if we have to come back and do cleanup work, you won't have the black color be slightly different from the primer black color. But I still do recommend black primer instead of white primer, simply because it makes it much easier for applying a layer of black onto the model. You won't have to put on like 2 coats as you would with white primer. There are a couple models with like open visors or faces exposed like this one. I just use my AK acrylic, kind of peachy flesh color. There's really not many of them. A lot of them have great helms or fully enclosed helmets otherwise. But there are a couple. So this is a good step after the silver's done, after the tabards are done, to go through and just get the faces done real quick. So didn't take very long. Just use a detail brush and knock them out. And now we're moving on to Xandri Dust. So this is my color that I use for all my wood grains. So back of shields is the most prominent part on these models that need this color. But I find it's a good like tannish brown color, sandy color, that especially once I've done a heavy wash on it, it makes it look like a nice wood grain. So I'm getting the backs of the shields. I'm getting the hilts of the swords, not the hilt, the handle. there's a word for it, not the pommel. There's the hilt, the pommel, crossguard. I don't know. The handle part of the sword. And I also have this really weird habit of even models that are sword armed, like if they have a sword in their hand and they have a scabbard, I don't cut off the sword handle, so it looks like they've got 2 swords. So I don't know. Again, I'm a fantasy wargamer, so give me a little bit of slack there. But yeah, otherwise, other than those two pieces, the backs of the shields and the sword handles, there's really not much more to apply here. And then, yeah, we're already on the belts because there's very little otherwise. I'm using, so my normal mix-up I've mentioned maybe before is that I use Doombull Brown, I use Scorched Earth, not Scorched Earth, Rhinoxide, Old Scorched Earth, and I'll use some other like brown color because I'd like my belts and whatnot to not all be the same color across models. And but in this case, I forwent the Rhinoxide because I thought it was too close to the black. It's a very, very dark brown color. So I introduced, I think it was XV88 as my third color, as kind of a tannish brown color. And what I do is just kind of work through the models in a row, just down the line where I'll pick out one part of a belt or a strap and paint it in one color, then move down to the next one, and then kind of repeat with the next color, picking a spot that I had not painted before. So for example, with this first model, I might paint the belt and maybe the scabbard in the same color there of Doombull Brown, and then on the next pass I might paint like the strap across its chest a slightly different brown color. And there you go, you just kind of keep going down the line until all of the brown bits are painted. There are a couple of figures too across, I guess, these three manufacturers, but mostly it's Wargames Atlantic, where they have some kind of like, it's underneath the chainmail, some kind of padded armor that sticks out below the chainmail tunic. And so I just threw these same three colors into the mix down there. So I didn't like pick a different color for that because it looked like a reasonable enough color. And there's not very much of it to have to hit anyway. And then here, yeah, so this is the third pass. And actually by the third pass, you can see like half of the models there are totally done. So like not every model is going to get this third brown color. And there's some models where like across the entire figure I'll paint one color. You just kind of mix and match as you go. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just following that pattern of keep going down the line ultimately 3 times until everything has all of the belts, scabbards, little knickknacks, any pouches or stuff like that, all painted in these 3 brown colors. But yeah, I have a completed pile so that I don't pick up models that are finished and waste time. And then we're back to my metallics. So we did Lead Belcher as a base. There are a couple bits and bobs, especially on the back of the shields on these figures, that it looks like supposed to be metal. So I went back with my metal. It also was an opportunity to clean up any chainmail areas that I'd hit by mistake when I was painting like belts and stuff like that. But so I go through and I hit those metal parts with the same Lead Belcher color. And then I got my Retributor armor gold that I use for sword bits, and again, because of Fantasy Wargame, I do like belt buckles and stuff in gold. I think it just pops really well. And that the great helms have lots of little like accent features on them that, again, historically, very, very unlikely that historically they would have been gold, but they look cool in gold. So it's the old school Warhammer player in me that wants these great helms to have some gold accents. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going through and picking some stuff out in this gold color. And Retributor armor is probably the single best metallic I think I've ever dealt with, but certainly it's the best gold color. I also use it, as you saw maybe on my Hannibal's Veterans, I use it as a good base for like bronze, because if you wash it really heavily, it tones it way, way down. And then Stormhost Silver is my very bright highlight color. It's similar to the old Mithril Silver. It's not as good like in terms of coverage. It's funny, I guess, having dealt with lots of paints over 20 years or something like that. You remember stupid stuff like that Mithril Silver had better coverage than Stormhost Silver, even though they're functionally the same color. But yeah, we're doing just a very light dry brush. I took a small brush and we're hitting the silver bits. This is another good reason why you want to have base coated in your pure black color, because it's kind of inevitable that you're going to hit some stuff that you don't intend to here. And if it's not egregious, I don't even go back and clean it up. Because again, a lot of sins are forgiven in the wash step. And then here, this is the same Stormhost Silver color. Once I've done the dry brush on all the chainmail bits, all the helmets, swords, I'm going to take a detail brush and going to, I guess you could call it edge highlight. I use the term dot highlight a lot because in my mind, that's what I'm doing. I'm taking a very small amount of paint and just kind of picking up the raised edges that it looks like the prior color, the prior dry brush step picked up. And now we're on to some freehand work. I thought this would be a good opportunity to do some freehand. I'm kicking myself because I figured out a way to get the camera closer to my paint desk, like toward the end of this process. So in the future, I'll be closer up with these. But for now, you can kind of roughly see what I'm doing. As I discussed in the Hannibal's Veterans video, where I was freehanding some Carthaginian shields, the basic premise with freehanding is that you're not going to get it right on the first pass, or even the second pass, but you're going to seesaw back and forth between your foundation color, whatever like the back of the shield is, and the design that you're putting on. We saw this too on the checkered shields video that I put out, the weathering shields video that I put out. It's all the same concept, which is you're going to take a base color, you're going to roughly kind of mock up a design. The most important part of that is making sure that the placement is correct. Even if the design isn't crisp, it's not exactly the right shape, you're just going to kind of roughly lay it out, but you want to make sure that it's in kind of the right spot on the shield. And I went with I looked online, there's just lots of different holy order shield designs and stuff like that. So I picked like 3 or 4 different simple designs that I thought I'd be able to replicate fairly easily. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm taking Corax white because it's a good way to build up to pure white without having to do like 3 or 4 layers. You can just do like 2 layers of white. So once I've kind of roughly put the shape in, I'm going to come back in with my black color and I'm going to cut in against it to neaten the line. And again, here too, just like the first step, you're not trying to get it perfect even at this stage. You're just trying to make it a little bit neater with each pass. And what we're going to do after this is we're going to switch over to pure white and then go back in to redetail the white areas. So if you make any mistakes here, you can then clean it up with the white. And then at the end, usually by like that pass, they're pretty much done. However, if I make another little mistake with the pure white, and typically I need like 2 thin layers of pure white. But if I make any mistakes there, I can then come back in with the black another time. Very similar to what we saw with, again, the checkered shield video is a good kind of template for what we're doing here, where you're expecting that you're going to have to go back and forth with the same color twice with each color, right? And so in this case, that's all we're doing here. So I'm cutting in with the black. We're going to go take pure white and come back in with pure white. And my brushes tend to get smaller too as I go because I'm getting more and more, not refined, but precise with each step. Certainly like with the first like blocking step, you can use just a regular old base coating brush as long as it's got a good tip. But then by the end, I'm usually using a very small detail brush for cleaning this stuff up. I really enjoy freehanding. The truth is, the Little Big Men transfers are like way better than anything I could ever do, but I do enjoy this process. Gives you a lot of creative freedom. And here we go again. This is the pure white color that I mentioned we're going to switch to. And as I also said, I tend to go with like, especially when I'm painting like pure white on a shield like this, just aim for like 2 thinner coats, and you'll have a better time with it, I think. Same thing here, just clean it up a little bit. And then I don't think I do it on camera, but there were a couple of models where I felt that I needed to come back in with black after my 2 coats of white here in order to just like maybe neaten the line, or maybe the like angle wasn't quite right. So that's what I would end up doing at the end here. I don't think I documented it though. And then we're on to the dry brush step. I had a bunch of white already kind of out on my palette over on the left. So we're on to the dry brush step. So if you've not seen any of my tutorial videos before, this kind of method is I don't want to call it unique. I'm sure other people do it too, but we're going through and we're basically doing a light dusting dry brush of pure white across all of the non-metallic areas in the model. That's why we did the mithril silver step for the metallics, because for the non-metallic stuff, we're doing just this really light dry brush step. And then this is going to take it up to a super high level of contrast, where even actually after this step, I'm going to take pure white on a detail brush and pick out a couple of super raised areas to put just like a dot highlight of white on. And then the final step is that we're going to wash it in the heavy, heavy wash of Agrex Earthshade or whatever mix of washes you've got. But for this stage here, we're just taking a light dry brush, and I cannot emphasize enough how light this dry brush should be, because what you can do is, go back multiple times. You can always add more paint. It's very difficult to take paint away once you put it on. So Keep it light. A whisper, a suggestion of a highlight, if you will, is what you're going for. And then here, this is, again, I take a detail brush, same white color I've already got out. And then there's just, like, it's not, you don't want to get heavy-handed with this because it'll kill the effect. But you want to make it look like kind of glints of the sun reflecting off the highest points of the model. And so that's all I'm doing there. You're using the dry brush highlights from the prior step as a guide for where to place these. And yeah, you're essentially highlighting the dry brush that you did with pure white. But just little dots of it, you don't have to put it everywhere. And certainly not on like flat areas. You want to keep it to raised edges that you feel would be reflecting sunlight very well. And it's a quick step again, especially on these models because they have so much metal like on the tops of their heads, on their like swords and shoulders and stuff like that, which is where a lot of these highlights would normally be placed on a model. Yeah, it was really mostly just like the top of the tabard, kind of like I don't want to say the bottom of the tabard, it's not underneath, but like where the legs kick out in the back is where I found a lot of these highlights needed to be placed. Like on the edge of a shield, you saw maybe I put like 2 dots there. It also creates the illusion, I realize, of like damage, especially to shields, when you've got little nicks in the shield that would maybe reflect light instead of just being a perfectly flat surface. It's sort of a pre-weathering step that way. But it really accentuates the like folds in the robes, in the belt, stuff like that. Yeah, I really hate badge painting big units like this. This was reasonable enough because again they're all basically the same colors, but it is tedious to paint big. I like swore after the unit of like 40 that I just did I would never do this again, but here we are. So who knows what'll happen next? But I don't enjoy painting bigger batches of like I think like 10 is the good batch painting number to go with. And that way you don't like skip details or anything like that either. But and here we go. So this is my big old pot of wash that I use. Again, for those who've never seen my videos, this started out by using Army Painter Dip is how I did this method. And then the Army Painter Dip works great. I actually think it works better than this. But it's kind of a pain to use because it is oil-based. And so it's going to kill a brush. I use like a brush-on method for that too. I have an old video that I put out on how I did that. But the process is the same. But I switched over to just like a heavy wash of Agrex Earthshade is like the base, but Army Painter also has their like strong tone in a acrylic format in dropper bottles. So I like mix some of that in here, some Seraphim Sepia, some other stuff. So it's just like a hodgepodge wash that I use, but you could just use straight out of the pot Agrex Earthshade. I highly recommend that. And you can see I'm getting just really aggressive, just like bathing the model in this wash and then wicking away any paint that's pulling on flat areas and whatnot. So this is, you need a good matte varnish for this because it's going to have a sheen to it. And so this is Vallejo's matte varnish that I've mentioned a couple of times I've had kicking around and I wanted to try. And so I did, but I got to tell you, I hated it. And I'll show you the finished product. It goes on the same way. It even looks the same as the Army Painter stuff that I use. But in the end, it was like glossy. And I don't know, like I shook it up pretty well. I'm a pretty experienced hobbyist. I shook it up, but you can see here at the end, yeah, this is the finish. I put on 2 thin coats of this stuff, and look, it's glossy. So I'll give it another try on like another test model just to make sure. Maybe it needed even more mixing than I expected. But yeah, as a result, I thank God I stopped like after like 5 of these models. Yeah, I switched back to my Army Painter stuff. This stuff also has like a ball bearing in it now that I have not experienced on my prior versions of this product of theirs. So they've recently started adding little ball bearings into their dropper bottles, which is cool because it helps with mixing. So again, hopefully I just didn't mix it well enough. It had been sitting for a long time, so not knocking Vallejo because I love Vallejo products, but yeah, that was not a good experience. So matte varnished, and then I have a full tutorial on paper banners. I really don't know why I included this footage because that banner is not even the one that I end up using in the end. But if you're curious on how I do these paper banners, I do have a full tutorial on it. I recommend you check that out. And it shows kind of step-by-step how I'm doing this. But the kind of the Spark Notes version is you're going to just take regular printer paper, print out whatever design you like. I painted on like a little cross there. And then, yeah, you're going to affix it to the banner pole and put white glue on the backs and then squeeze them together. It really is that simple. But again, I have a full tutorial that goes through in detail, step by step. But it ended up looking like a Templar banner, so I swapped it out in the end. And here we go. So you can see the banners changed out to the Hospitaller banner. Yeah, basing got done. I have a video on basing, as I keep mentioning. I might redo it, actually, with one of my upcoming projects here, just in a slightly better edited format than I do now, I think. And yeah, in terms of upcoming stuff, got a lot more stuff to put together, so maybe some Western nights that I'll do next. I got some Vikings. I don't know. I'll take a day off and then think about it. But as ever, I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and until next time, happy gaming.